August. Are there any apologies?
Chair, apologies from Councillors Beattie, Bennett, Pottinger, Russell and Young.
Thank you. Order of business?
Is as printed in the agenda, Chair.
If there's any declarations of interest, you can make them known now or when the item comes up. Item number 5. Sorry. Minutes first. Are there any comments on the minutes? Okay. Yep. Happy with them? No. Number 5, Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. This is just your regular update on the major applications that we currently have undetermined. The only thing I would draw your attention to is that I've added a new section in there, section 3, just to give you a bit of a flavour of the fact we have got a few what we call premature applications in the system, so just to let members know that we've got a few of those which are almost anticipating the next local plan.
So we accept the recommendation. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. It's a question I've been meaning to ask for a while. The report came to planning in June, which said that there were 25 legacy cases still in the system. My understanding is these are applications which we as a committee have given approval for, but they then go on to the process of negotiating Section 75 agreements. Now, I'm informed that you get 5 years in which to carry out the work, but that clock starts ticking as soon as the Section 75 agreement's gone through, which basically means that land can be banked by developers, for example, indefinitely if they draw out the negotiation. The reason it was brought to my attention is because recently Edinburgh Council have introduced new regulations as part of the planning, and it says that all applications requiring a legal agreement will be required to complete the legal agreement within 6 months of the minded to grant, and that those that don't complete within 6 months are then brought back to the planning committee, and there are further regulations whereby they're deemed to have been withdrawn if further deadlines are not reached. I just wonder whether 25 seems quite a lot of applications which are still hanging around. And the one I have a particular interest in, as you'll probably be aware, is the Cold Hall one. And it might be useful for this committee to know the status of many of these applications.
You've raised a good point there. Peter, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, Chairman, I'll just clarify some of the issues there. The first one was that a legacy case is something which is defined by the Scottish Government, which relates to an application that has been submitted and validated and is more than a year old. Many of them are often more than a year old because there's ongoing negotiations to do with Section 75 agreements, but not necessarily. Some applications are submitted and then circumstances change, so the applicant may ask the authority to hold it in abeyance for a few months whilst they maybe review their business or their plans. So it's not necessarily all Section 75 delays, but a good majority of those are. The other thing just to update you on is that it's a 3-year implementation now. It used to be 5 years, but a number of years ago the Scottish Government changed it, so you get a 3-year implementation. Those 3 years starts from when someone gets their grant of planning permission, which is actually the certificate saying you've got planning permission subject to these conditions. That doesn't get issued until after a Section 75 agreement is signed and then registered. So it's a little bit of a delay sometimes between the registering process. Yes, the 25 legacy cases. The Planning Authority has over 800 cases a year, so 25 is actually quite a small number, and certainly below national averages and all the sort of national position. But I appreciate an application being in the system for more than a year is something to review. We do annually chase up and follow up on legacy cases with applicants to see where progress is, where we can move them on. More than happy if the members want us to report back regularly on outstanding legacy cases and give you updates. That's not a problem if the members wish to do that. In terms of the Cold Hall Moor application, it was a case that the applicants, Hargreaves, have just simply asked that it's held in abeyance whilst they review their business operations. There's obviously quite a few significant changes in terms of their own market. The price of coal has dropped. You're most probably aware of the situation about Long Gannet. So there's some situations which are changing. I think other authorities as well of Edinburgh are having this situation where they're saying, well, after 6 months, pull it back in, let's have a review. But I'm more than happy to bring things back if that's what the committee wants me to do.
Are you happy with that, Ian?
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. That was a good description of what I wanted to hear. Going back to Cold Hall, if I recollect correctly, the application which was passed was for 10 years operation. Now, does that 10 years not start until Hargreaves decide what the market conditions are in comparison to what they want to do, and is therefore worthwhile them seeking a final agreement, a certificate, as you say?
Yeah, just to clarify again, maybe when previously I made reference to the 3 years, that was 3 years to start, to commence. There's no time period to complete or conclude an application. Coming back to Cold Hall Moor, the 10-year time period was that was the anticipated time period it would take them to extract the coal from the site. If I remember, there was another 2 years maybe to conclude the sort of land restoration thereafter. But yeah, those 10 years won't start until they get their permission and then they start work on site. At the moment, they physically haven't got their planning permission because the committee reminded to grant permission subject to us concluding a legal agreement, securing restoration, a lot of other details. That was never concluded, like I say, because it was held in abeyance. But that 10 years is just a reference to how long they felt it was going to take them to extract the coal from the ground.
Okay.
I think so. I'm just wondering what other committee members feel about the possibility of bringing back automatically to this committee applications where the Section 75 agreement's not being concluded within a certain time frame.
Well, we could do that, or we could let the individual councillors, if they want to raise a specific thing as you did with the Cold Hall, rather than the planners having to do this on a regular basis. I think we could open that up for discussion.
Yeah, Jimmy, I would want to know what would be the benefit of that, because I can't think of a reason where we can actually change a decision simply because the Section 75 agreement hasn't been reached with the council. For example, the developer might think the council's asking too much and be holding out for that. If there's anything we can change by bringing it back, then yes, of course. But I think the big thing that needs to change actually is when we agree applications, if the developers didn't start and complete the development by a certain time, we should have the authority just to say, right, we're removing that site. At this present time, we don't, which is the detriment, for example, in last week, where the guy started at Barney House building that frame and just stopped and walked away, and there's nothing we can do about it. But if there's a benefit to bringing it back, and we can change decisions or put pressure on developers to actually get on and do stuff, then good and well.
Right. Item 6.
Chairman, again, it's just a regular update report regarding local review body decisions and appeal decisions. There was no actual local review body decisions to report back, but there is an appeal decision regarding Cockpen Schoolhouse for members' information. And just to let you know, it was a retrospective application, so we are actually following that up with the property owner.
Happy to accept the recommendation. Which brings on to item 7.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a report regarding a pre-application consultation regarding the proposed new stabling and cleaning facilities, new railway lines, office, staff, welfare facilities, car parking and access onto land at Miller Hill Marshalling Yards, Whitehill Road, Dalkeith. The proposal is similar to and on the same site as a previous grant of planning permission regarding the provision of railway facilities. An earlier scheme was approved by the Planning Committee at its meeting of April 2013. The purpose of this report is to afford the members the opportunity to make comment on the proposal at this early stage of the planning process in line with guidance previously reported to committee in May and October 2014. The applicants have engaged in a public consultation exercise which concluded on the 18th of August 2015. A public drop-in session was held at Danderhall Community Centre on the 23rd of July 2015, and it's anticipated that a detailed plan application will be submitted very shortly. The report outlines a provisional planning consideration with regard to the adopted local plan. However, it is worth noting that this consideration is based on the indicative information available at present. A detailed assessment of any proposal will be made once a plan application is forthcoming. It's recommended that the committee notes the provisional planning position set out in the report, that any comments that the members wish to make will form part of the minutes of the committee meeting, and the expression of any provisional view does not fetter the committee in its consideration of any subsequent formal planning application.
Thank you. Are we happy to accept the recommendations? That takes us on to item 8, Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of 211 dwellings on land at Harveston Farm, Powdermill Bray, Gore Bridge. The proposed development consists of 199 two-storey dwellings comprising a mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced houses, a three-storey block of flats, on-site affordable housing provision, 2 vehicular access points off Powdermill Bray, the closing off of the existing access to Harveston House, pedestrian links to the A7, a bus stop and lay-by, open space providing a kickabout area and play provision, landscaping and suds, and car parking provision. The houses are of a contemporary design and will comprise a mix of concrete roof tiles and render walling. The site was allocated in 2003 with a continued commitment in the 2008 local plan. This means there is a presumption in favour of residential development. This presumption is not outweighed by the material considerations. The development itself is well laid out, providing distinct character areas and interesting spaces. In addition to the consultation process, there have been 5 representations objecting to the application, and objections from both the Morpeth and Gorebridge Community Councils. The committee deferred consideration of the application at its meeting in May to enable the applicant to review their affordable housing provision. In response to the committee's comments, the applicant has increased the affordable housing provision from 12 units to 21. This brings the level of provision up to 10% of the on-site units, which equates to the upper level as required by the development plan. As the site was allocated in the 2003 local plan, the affordable housing provision is in the range of 5 to 10%. The applicant is providing 10%. The increase in affordable housing provision has not had a consequential impact on the layout and design of the scheme. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to developer contributions and conditions.
Anybody, any comments? Jim?
No, just I think it's good to note the fact that they've responded to our requests for additional affordable housing. So it's it proves it's worth asking at the end of the day. A number of things to welcome in this in terms of some local issues that are going to be resolved as a result of this. Traffic lights at the Harveston crossroads, which is quite problematic to get across, and also resolving the issue of the a terminus for the buses at Birkenside, which has been a problem for some time. So I know that there have been some concerns raised about the density of the development, the number of houses, but I think we've got to take the view that the proximity to the station has to, I'm quite happy to see more dense developments, more houses, more people, more potential for using the railway. So I'm quite happy with the numbers that are there. So I'm happy with the recommendation.
Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I would echo Councillor Muirhead's sentiments regarding the proximity to the station, because it will improve use of public transport. I'd like to remind the committee that a previous application for a large number of houses, we discussed the provision of fibre broadband to the premises. I think at that meeting, which was also deferred for that reason and for another, I think we were advised that, I think Peter might be able to confirm that the position is that we cannot impose a condition of fibre to the premises. But if that is the case, I would like to do so. If not, I would like to know what we're doing to liaise and to bring to the attention of developers, really, that this is a very important aspect. It's a factor which many people use to decide whether to move out to Midlothian. Now, and I can accept that if there are planning, if there's a planning condition, or if there are negotiations, I can understand that the development would need to go ahead if the cabinet has not been upgraded, because the cabinet, I understand, needs to be upgraded before the fibre to the premises can be installed. And I can understand it going ahead without that in such circumstances. But we're rapidly approaching, within the next few years, a position where all cabinets will have been upgraded. And at that point, there will be no reason whatsoever why fibre to the premises cannot be incorporated into all, at least large-scale developments. So, again, I would like to press that point home.
Okay, thanks, Ian. That's not one of the conditions in the paper at the moment, but perhaps you can answer.
Yeah, Chairman, and just to let members know, following on from the Rosewell decision, every housing scheme now we are saying to the developers, you need to make sure your units are superfast broadband compatible. We're looking into where the connections are, so we are pursuing that with all the house builders now. So we're just taking that across the board, that issue.
Derek?
Yeah, can we just make sure when we're doing that, Peter, that the wording in there is broad enough so as if there's something comes along in 4 or 5 years' time that's a bit better, that we can actually insist on that. We've been here before where we've put wording in and then we're really stuck with it 5 years down the line when something better's coming along, and it's to make sure to cover that. But I think the main point I do think is worth again reiterating here is the fact that there are now nearly double the affordable houses and percentages here going into this site, and that's something we would, I think, officers should keep in mind, is that we should be looking for the higher level of affordable houses in every development, and I think it's laudable that we've now got that up to about 10% for 5%.
Thanks for that, Derek.
Chairman, just to follow on from that point, the 5 to 10% was a consequence of the 2003 local plan. Obviously, we moved on to the 25% to the 2008, but since this decision, we're talking to any of the outstanding sites from 2003 that we're looking to push for the 10%, not the 5% yet.
Peter?
Could I just remind all of us that 25% is still woefully low, because in England it's now as high as 40%, and I feel that affordable homes are really very crucial, and I would recommend people to read a report that is called Housing and Wellbeing, which was sponsored by Shelter, and which the Scottish Government has really hailed as a wonderful report. The chairman of the report was Bob Black, the former Auditor General, and he really makes the most overwhelming strong point that if we house our people badly, it brings on a lot of very negative situations like drugs, crime, ill health. The NHS suffers, the community suffers, and we really need to do something about it. And I'm very pleased that I will play a part with the Scottish Government in addressing it in the future.
Do you want to make a comment on that, Peter? Yeah, are we going to get 40% anytime soon?
No, I mean, the policy in the 2008 local plan and the subsequent policy in the next local plan is looking at 25%. That's in line with Scottish Government guidance, so that's where we are. We haven't quite got to the 40% yet, maybe in the future.
Thanks. Which brings on to item 9A.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application in principle for the demolition of an existing dwelling house, erection of a hotel, residential development, formation of access roads and car parking at land at Calderstones, Bigger Road, Hill End. The site is situated within the Hill End Country Park and the Pentland Hills Regional Park. Policies in the development plan support tourist-based accommodation in key gateway locations, subject to them being sensitively accommodated in the landscape. The site's strategic location in close proximity to the A702 and city bypass makes this a key gateway location. Furthermore, the development's location in relation to the Midlothian Ski and Snowboard Centre helps to support the Council's ambitions to develop this facility. However, the proposed new housing plots are contrary to policy. but it is suggested that the proposed 3 units could be self-catering tourist accommodation in association with the hotel. The principle of replacement dwelling is acceptable. A newly created access will be formed off the A702. The access will also form the new entrance and exit to the Midlothian Ski and Snowboard Centre. As the application is in principle, the detailed design, layout and landscaping will be a consideration at a later stage if committee is minded to support this application. There have been consultation responses from a number of interested bodies, including Transport Scotland, SEPA and the Scottish Wildlife Trust. There have been 4 representations and the Damhead Community Council has objected to the application. The recommendation is to grant planning permission in principle, subject to conditions.
Is anyone minded to speak on this? Or are we happy to accept the recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. I had a close look at this and I must say I have some deep misgivings about it. The very fact that they seem to need to build 4 houses to make it economically viable for the whole development seems to me a bit suspect. I also have concerns about the fact that a number of exotic trees and shrub species are to be removed. I didn't take a site visit, and not having a car, it's not that easy to get to, although the number 4 bus terminus isn't close by. But I did the next best thing, and I took a look on Google View or Google Maps. And from the roadside, it does look as if there are quite a number of mature trees in that area, and it does overlook a substantial part of Midlothian because of the elevated site. Also, looking at the loss of biodiversity, again, we don't seem to look closely at biodiversity issues on this council because of a lack of resources to do so. Also, I noticed that 2 similar applications close by in in my view, appeared to be much more suitable locations for hotels had not been progressed. So if there's a demand for a hotel in that area, why have they not been progressed in the other areas? That, plus a few other points, which I'll not go into detail, leads me to conclude that I would like to oppose this application.
Andrew?
Yeah, I'd just like to agree with Councillor Baxter on some of the points that he made there, particularly the fact that there's going to be trees cut down. The local community council are opposed to this development, and there could well be better sites available, but they don't seem to be getting considered. So I too, I've got my reservations about this application. You know.
Are you seconding Ian Baxter?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Yeah, can I just have some points of clarity? Ian seemed to indicate that there was 3 new houses going to be built with this. I thought they had been refused in this, and that any buildings built would actually no be as houses, that would be either principal use for the staff, or alternatively they would be used as chalets rather than private houses.
Yeah, that's correct, Chairman. The application originally included 3 dwelling houses as well as the hotel. The report, yeah, we've said, look, that's contrary to policy. We're not supportive of those 3 dwellings, but why don't you consider self-catering tourist accommodation or something that supplements and supports the hotel? Yeah.
Ian?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm aware of that. It was not the building of the houses I was concerned about. It was the fact that they were included in the original application, which leaded me to suspect that the viability of the whole project was borderline and depended upon the selling of private houses in that area to help fund it. And so I do have concerns that a hotel and chalet complex in that area may not be economically viable, and so therefore there isn't the demand for it that's been put forward.
I think Peter said that it might be staff accommodation.
Yeah, Chairman, the planning position, as I made reference to, was about the proposed 3 dwelling houses. We're suggesting that part of the process refuse and they become self-catering accommodation. What I would just say, though, is coming back on the viability issue, is that look, this is just an application in principle at the moment. It's difficult to cost out until you get a detailed design. It's difficult to cost it out. So until you get it costings, how can you get into a viability discussion? I think it was just the principle of whether you want dwellings on the site or not dwellings on the site. The report says, look, we're happy with the tourist accommodation, but not new dwelling houses.
Peter?
Councillor Imrie and myself, when I was substituting for you, attended a very interesting presentation by the Swanston Farm proprietor, what they are planning to do at Swanston. And that is the area immediately adjacent and opposite the Esso pump station. And that is very, very ambitious and very exciting development. That also includes a hotel. And I feel that we really ought to look at this whole evaluation of this proposal in comparison to what they are planning there. I think they're literally next door to each other. So we really ought to, as Midlothian, take into account what the other Edinburgh City of Council, the Edinburgh, whatever you call it, that local authority is doing.
Russell?
Chairman, I'm quite surprised that, in fact, there was any opposition to this at all. I thought people would have welcomed, or certainly this committee would have welcomed this. If you want to see economic benefits brought to Midlothian, it accords with the local plan. And you might be laughing, but tourism is a major, major thing that's been factored on not only by the Midlothian Council, but by Scottish Government as well. And you hear it time after time, anything we can do. Now, if this is not a gateway into Midlothian, then I ask you, what is? And it seems to me it's an outline. It's not talking about residential properties, because we're quite clearly within the report it's saying if it was to, then that wouldn't even be a starter. But we've been looking to try and get hotel development in this area for many, many years. And there's a couple of applications that came forward that haven't come to anything. Now, I don't know the reasons for that, but because something hasn't happened doesn't mean to say that you don't then encourage an alternative. I just wish, Chairman, that this was actually Midlothian Council having an application in for a hotel on our site, but it isn't. And I'm sorry, Councillor Coventry, we can't just wait around because we might have something else coming up later on. It doesn't work like that. You actually deal with applications on their merit. Now, you either see the merit in this or you don't see the merit in it. And as far as I'm concerned, I go along with this wholeheartedly, and I'll certainly be supporting, and if I have to, I'll move that we support the application that's in front of us, which is for outline only and will come back to us when the details are available.
Okay, Russell. Andrew?
I accept that tourism's, it's a growth area in the Scottish economy, and it's, obviously we've got to encourage tourism. But my reservations about this proposal are the actual site itself. I think that that there are possibly better sites within the area for a hotel of that type.
Okay, Derek.
Yeah, I'm very much like Russell. I'm kind of... I wouldn't have thought anybody would have had objected to this. I mean, when you look through the paper, I really don't know whether the viability or not of a hotel is something we're allowed to take into account first and foremost. If we're going to start judging every planning application on whether we think it's going to be viable or not, our officers are going to have an awful lot of mere work done, and I suppose, like everything, you can ask two different people to write a report on viability of something or put a business case for it and get two different answers and complete different answers back. I'm not in the hotel game, so I don't care whether it be viable or no. I just wouldn't suspect that anybody was going to spend millions of pounds building a building if they didn't genuinely believe that it was viable. The reality is, it is an application, an outline, and when you look, there are some objections here and there are some concerns to take with that. But the reality here is the benefits, I think, massively outweigh the detriment to the area. So I'll be the same as Russell. I'll be supporting this application.
Bob first and then Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, if Edinburgh are going for one in Swanson, I think it's important to us to support this one. I'd rather the business came to Midlothian rather than just across the border into Edinburgh.
Ian?
Yeah, just to come back on the issue of viability, that was not the reason why I raised it. I accept that viability, economic viability, is not a planning consideration, and it's not formed part of my argument. My point was that brought into question whether there was a demand. And people are saying here that we should build a hotel there because it's fulfilling a demand. And I am not convinced that there is a demand there. I think I have no issue in building hotels in Midlothian. I'd like to see them, but in the right place. There's a site which has not been progressed. So how we can say that we have to build a hotel on a site which it overlooks a significant area of the local landscape, and which also has mature trees with exotic species in, is beyond me.
Adam?
Thanks, Chair. There's a company in Pennycook called Experience Scotland, local members will know it, and it brings about 10,000 visitors into Scotland every year. The majority of the ones it has is actually bus travel for a lot of the ones that are coming, and they don't want to stay in Edinburgh because there's no areas for the buses to park anywhere near the hotels. And he's actually, the person who runs it, is actually putting people into Fife in the Scottish borders because there's no accommodation in the Midlothian area. And he's actually quite certain, although I've not spoken to him about this, he could fill a hotel on a regular basis just with the numbers that he's bringing in to the Edinburgh area, but not want to stay actually in Edinburgh. So I don't see a problem in the viability of this. And, you know, I just sometimes think folk can't see any further forward than, well, I'm not saying that, no, that's not really very fair. But this actually is, I think, is a great site. I mean, it's about 10 minutes from the airport, depending on the traffic and the bypass, I suppose. But it's certainly a gateway to Midlothian, as Russell said, and I'll certainly be supporting it. And if it needs to be seconded by Russell, I'll do that as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? And remember, it's outline planning permission, so it will come back to this committee in the future. Okay, we have two proposals here, one against it and one for it. We will go with the people who are against it first, if I could have the people who want to vote not to have this hotel. And those for?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Which brings on to item 9B.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of 2 wind turbines and associated meter house and formation of access track on land at Springfield Farm, Springfield Road, Pennycook. The proposed turbines are 35.5 metres high to the tip of the blade in an upright position. The tower is 24.5 metres high and the rotor blade sweep is 22 metres. The meter house building will be 2 metres wide by 1.2 metres high. National and local planning policy sets out a presumption in favour of renewable energy as long as it doesn't have a demonstrable detrimental impact on the landscape or on residential amenity. However, the assessment of this application concludes that in this case, the proposed turbines will have a detrimental impact on the landscape. The Council's landscape capacity study for wind turbine developments provides guidance in support of development plan policies to assist in the assessment of turbine proposals. The study, which has been tested on appeal, restricts wind turbine developments in some areas and supports limited wind turbine developments within other areas of Midlothian. The proposed turbines are along the boundary of an area of restraint and an area where small-scale turbines can be accommodated in the landscape if sited sensitively. The overall character of the landscape is one of lowland moorland and one in which the siting of turbines will be very prominent in the landscape. The proposed turbines will be sited at a distance of 340 metres from the nearest residential property. This is of a sufficient distance to mitigate any impact on residential amenity in terms of noise and shadow flicker. There have been 93 representations, 88 of which have objected to the proposed development. A letter from the Howgate Community Council expresses the concerns they have received from local residents. There has also been 5 representations supporting the application. The proposed turbines are contrary to development plan policy and the Council's approved landscape capacity study for wind turbine development, and as such the recommendation is to refuse the planning application.
This was a subject of a visit, which is not the same as a local review visit. Even if you weren't there yesterday, you can still join in the debate. I wonder if you, Adam, want to start off the...
I'll kick it off for this, Chair. I mean, I've got my views on this and I will make them heard during the debate. The reason I called it in was so that members could get a chance to see it and make an assessment themselves rather than just having a paper exercise. And obviously the lobbying that's been going on from objectors and obviously people that are in favour of it. So, I mean, I'll kick it off if you want. I mean, I'm actually supporting the application. It's a difficult one in some respects because I know that people have strong held views against this, and I can understand them. And I take each one of these ones on their own merits. When it was the Auchincourt one, I actually voted against it for a number of reasons. I thought it was too big. I thought it was more visible than this by a long way. I think it was 18 turbines for what I can remember. I think it was reduced at one stage, and I was certainly very much against that. But I think this one's got some different aspects to it. And as I say, the reason I called it in is that it's part of a bigger picture for the development on the Leadburn farm, or the Springfield farm, sorry. They're looking to put a working farm in here for visitors to attend, 20,000 a year they're projecting. There'll be 10 to 14 jobs. And if you're talking about tourism, about the hotel earlier on, and obviously bringing people to the area, that could only be good. And for me, if there's a percentage of them can stay, can visit Pennycook, some of the attractions there, and or visit the Leadburn Inn, you know, some business going there. I certainly these things would certainly add to the area. Now, you're not going to get 20,000 folk coming in Austin and all going to visit Pennycook, even if you've got a percentage of them going. I think that would be advantageous for certainly for the town centre, which certainly needs a boost, and there's work going on in that at the moment. There are well-held objections, and I understand it, and it was very much the same in Auchincourt. I voted against Auchincourt, but I'm actually supporting this one. And I think in terms of the houses at Wellington Farm Cottages, which is the ones just coming off the main road, which are the nearest properties to this development, there isn't one objection for them. So that, to me, would tell me a fair bit. So as far as I'm concerned, I've made my views known. As I say, I called it in so members could get a chance to see it, because it's about out the road, and unless you know the area, you wouldn't know what the site was actually like. But it's going to be a working farm. That's the proposal. The wind turbines would actually help to finance that and support the farm that's actually operating there at the moment. So on that basis, I will certainly be supporting it. But I'll listen to the rest of the debate as well.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Chair. Right, start off. I mean, I'm not against wind farms at all, and I say it a bit, and I'm fully supportive of the council's landscape capacity study for wind turbine development in Midlothian, and that was originally approved by the council in February 2007, and again approved by this council in October 2014 by the councillors, and I feel that on that basis, it's bearing in mind that Auchincourt Moss and this development is within sort of the lowland moorlands and the moorland fringes area. It sits in there. The other thing is on the height. We have said that 30 metres was the height that we thought was acceptable, and this one is going to be 35 metres. And I believe also there has been a suggestion made to the applicants that there is a possible other site within that area that could be more acceptable. And I don't know, but it's just on this one, I just feel that it's not just one or two things that falls short of as far as our local plan goes and the countryside plan. I just feel it's on other issues, and that's where I would have doubts about supporting it.
Peter?
Well, we have an exemplary planning department here. They suggested that this should be refused. When I came there yesterday and saw how it would be an absolute blot on the landscape, I really felt we need that like a hole in our head. It's bad enough that we had allowed one of those turbines just above Pennycook. It slipped through the mind. But here, if those two come, there will be another two next door, and before we know, there are many, many blots on the landscape, and I really want to vote very strongly against it.
Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I'd really like to take issue with what Councillor Rosie said before about the wind energy supplementary guidance, which followed over from the landscape capacity study 2014 and 7 respectively. Although the latter has relaxed to a certain extent the restrictions, the 2007 study was extremely restrictive. And I believe, and have believed for some time, that the 2014 guidance is also too restrictive. It does not reflect our collective responsibility to help Scotland to meet its carbon reduction targets. You know, Midlothian has no tidal or wave energy, limited solar. We have to do our bit, and I feel that we have to make sure we do our bit wherever we can in terms of renewable energy. But the guidance is guidance. It refers to a wind farm, and a wind farm is defined as being a single turbine. Now, that's not what people would imagine in their minds to be a wind farm. It's also, this development is not anything like Auchencorth Moss. You know, we're talking about 2 turbines at 35.5 metres compared to 18 turbines at 100 metres. You know, this is nothing like the same scale. But one thing I would draw members' attention to is within the guidance, it does say, and I quote, for the avoidance of doubt, all wind energy proposals will be assessed against the requirements of MLDP and NRG1 and NRG2. Now, I've read through NRG1 and NRG2, and I do not believe that this application is inconsistent with that. So if you read the guidance, it actually allows this development to go ahead. I've paid close attention to this, the detail of this application, as I did with Mount Lothian, and despite what people may think, I don't automatically support wind turbines. I voted against Mount Lothian for a number of reasons. I asked the same questions of this development, and I'm quite satisfied that this development is acceptable in that area, and I would like to support the motion for it to be accepted.
Derek?
Members should stay in their seats, but I'm going to actually agree with Ian Baxter for a change. I actually think it is quite right, as I can't see anything apart from the difference of a 5 metre height in which to differentiate this from where we could be. The other site that was identified, as far as I could make out, and I'm happy to be corrected, was moving these turbines a lot closer to where people's houses were, and therefore were more likely to bring in a lot more objections. I think Ian's spot on to try and even weigh this against other applications that have came in is just a nonsense. This is 2 individual wind turbines that go in there. The one thing I would say is if I was looking at an economic viability point, I would look at this and think, well, is there a real economic viability with this here? Because if there is, I missed the boat on it. However, the reality here is, Ian again makes a point, we're asked, whenever we ask people, should we be developing green sources of energy, everybody says yes. And then when you say, can we put it here, an awful lot of people then say no. And it just seems to be that we need to grasp the nettle here. I'm going to be voting to support this because I think it's a reasonable application. It isn't like anything else we've been asked to support, and like Ian, I've voted against all the rest of them, but on this occasion I'm going to vote with this.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I attended the site visit yesterday, and I've got to say I'm generally in favour of wind farms, and I don't find them in the least a blot on the landscape. You know, the visual impact that they've got doesn't really, personally, it doesn't really bother me. It was interesting, we went to the site visit yesterday, and we went to the actual physical location of the units, which is all very well, but you know, the reasons for recommendation for rejection here is about the visual aspect when you're away from it, looking at it from a distance. And we did go round to the, I'm not sure what the number of the road is, but the road that runs from the just down for the Leadburn up to Lamanca, the back road that went up there yesterday, which is quite a bit away from the site. You know, when it was explained to us about the fact that the turbines would stand sort of 2 times the height of the line of trees that are near to the field, to be honest, it didn't seem that bad for that side. I took the opportunity after the visit, though, to go round, because I did ask about the other road that's sort of higher up and a bit closer, I think, to the actual site. I took the opportunity of going round there and seeing it for that distance and picturing it twice out of the trees, I think it looks slightly, has a bigger impact, and I think it's helpful looking at some of the photo montages that are up on the screen there to show that kind of thing. I'm knowing, you know, I'm in favour of wind farms, as I say, but in this instance, you know, when it's such a contentious subject, so many people get involved in the consultation, and we determine policy on the basis of that consultation. To then ignore that in these circumstances, I think is actually wrong. So I'm going to be voting against this because of that visual impact, which doesn't bother me, but it does bother a lot of people. And we've recognised that in our policies and determining these policies that are there. So, you know, on that basis, I'll be voting against this application.
Bob. Thank you, Chair. As many members will be aware, I've often visit where my wife comes from, the land of turbines, Orkney, and there are there, and there are many that you might wish not to see there, and some that are there. The fact is, they do a valuable bit of work there, but within the county, there is a lot of feeling that there wasn't enough planning discipline in the initial stages. And off that, but of course the cat is out the bag here. We have a planning policy down there. It is clearly stated and on page 95 and 8.9, and I remember the original landscape studies which were done when I first came to the council, which talked about the iconic landscape between the Moorfoots and the Pentlands, and this does exceed the height. I stated that there, and like Councillor Muirhead, I shall be opposing this.
Okay, Derek.
Yeah, just to say, like Jim, I sort of struggle with this one because I'm not against wind turbines. I'll just say that now. I'm for them. I think they play a useful part in providing energy for us in Scotland. And it's just that I feel that if we have made this move, it's guidance. I take it as guidance, but you know, and Derek's saying 5 metres, but it still is over. Why did we not say then 35 metres when we were putting the policies in? You know, so we're reacting. So on that basis, I would still think we should, on this occasion, on this one, we'll go against.
Ian?
Yeah, just to come in finally about the subjective feeling many people have about wind farms. There was a Scottish Government survey in 2013, and it found that 3 times as many people found wind farms to have a positive impact than a negative one. And the thing that struck me about that survey was that it was those living near to them who found them most positive. And the impressions people had changed markedly once they'd been built. I think that there was a fear that they would be intrusive, but once they were actually up, they realised they were not. And also, similarly, according to that survey, those who most frequently see the wind farms in their day-to-day lives tend to be the most favourable towards them. So I think we should be careful about getting hung up on how we like or dislike them. I wouldn't like a nuclear power station in Midlothian, but these are the alternatives we're looking at. And the implications of climate change are horrendous. They might not be for 2 or 3 generations, but we've got a responsibility to try and mitigate against that.
Nobody else want to speak? Oh, sorry, Russell.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Suppose I was behind getting the landscape capacity study done in the first place in prior to 2007, because we didn't have anything, but there was government guidelines coming out that we had to respond to with regard to wind turbines. And I suppose in a sense, when you look back at the 2007 one, it was quite draconian in itself, because it kind of left us as a turbine-free zone. And clearly that isn't addressing the climate change challenges that we have. So we updated it in 2014, and on the face of it, actually looking at the 2 turbines versus the capacity study and the policy that's been adopted, and we'll go into the local plan, in a black and white situation, I suppose it would be very easy to defend why you don't give this a consideration. But you then have to look at the material considerations, and material considerations, to me, form a package. And I think Councillor Montgomery alluded to what other activities will be taking part within that area, which could, again, and I mean, people can laugh, but we're talking about tourism coming into another part of the county, which perhaps we've not enjoyed so much. And it seems to me that if you have to take that in, then the plus factor for having a turbine meeting our CO2 emissions has got to be a tick in the box. The second thing is that it will bring people in to Midlothian, and therefore they will have disposable income, which has to be helpful to the Midlothian economy. And the third thing is, we talk in terms of talking about a turbine farm. It's not actually a farm, it's 2 wind turbines. And I think perhaps we get caught up in this, about this whole thing, about whether it was going to be 18, 20 or whatever, which was a different thing altogether. And I have to say that, you know, when you look at the material side, consideration side of it, then there is a justification to actually say, yes, the policy is there, it's there for good reasons, but there are circumstances when you have to come out with the policy and go with what you feel is right and proper. And I think on this occasion, it's right and proper to allow this application to go ahead. Therefore, I shall certainly be supporting it.
Right. Well, we have the actual recommendations are for refusal, which means if you're supporting for refusal, or if you're against it, you are agreeing that you want the turbines to be erected. So, Derek, do you have a seconder? And is it Ian and Adam? Sorry, it's Adam, and then Ian. Okay, those who wish to support the planners, if you could please show now. And those who wish to vote against the planners. Right, okay. Right, well, the planning permission has been refused. Thank you all very much.